All right. Thanks, everybody. So on our phone, we have Chris Epting. Chris, you there?
I am right here, man. How you doing?
All right. Thanks for calling again.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me back on.
Awesome. So in my hands right now, I have Hello, It's Me, Dispatches from a Pop Culture Junkie in my hands right now. And it's an awesome read. I love it.
Thank you very much.
And so you were on our baseball show, on our sports show, and I said, you know what, if I ever have a music show, you're going to be in trouble because I'm going to call you. So, we have our studio audience here again, and we're just going to go over a couple rock and roll landmarks that might be some of your favorites.
Oh, well, that's a pleasure. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm glad you glad you hooked me into this. I did actually a whole book about it called Led Zeppelin Crashed Here.
Of course.
And it's like a, coast-to-coast trip, kind of like Roadside Baseball, but just visiting rock and roll landmarks. So those are places I love to visit, and I've been to hundreds of them, and there's some really compelling ones out there. I mean, I don't know where you want me to start, but I can tell you right off the bat that if anybody's ever gone through Iowa, there's a place called Clear Lake, Iowa, and in my book I have the directions of how you get to the exact site where Buddy Holly's plane and Big Bopper and Richie Valens' plane came to a crash there in 1958, the day the music died.
That's crazy. Now, isn't that private property, though, or can you actually walk on that land?
You can walk right to it. It's the farmer who owns it is really cool about it, and what's happened over the years is there's kind of a makeshift memorial. People left the guitar and all this stuff. So the farmer, he's fine with it. People light candles there and all, and pretty much 12 months a year, even though the winter's pretty brutal out there. But that's when it happened, too, in February. So if you want to, I always like to go to places to kind of try and replicate what it was like then. So I went there in the dead of winter, and at the same time when it happened, and it's pretty brutal out there, and if, of course, that was a tragic landmark. They're not all like that, obviously. Although with rock and roll, there is a lot, as you can imagine, there is kind of a lot of death and mayhem.
Yeah.
Like when I went to school in Boston at Emerson College, there's a landmark right at Newberry, where Newberry Street hits Mass Ave. There's this painted building. I was there recently, and the mural on the wall is still kind of there. It's really faded. And I remember when I was in college in the early 80s, Musician Magazine shot the Cars standing against that mural. And it's to me, it's not a huge landmark, but because I remember the Cars in the early 80s, that they posed there, I always thought it was very cool. So that's kind of a local one in your area.
Yeah. So do you ever go to some of these places that might not have markers, and the people that are working there, or standing there, or living there, just don't know where they are? They don't know.
All the time. All the time. I mean, there was one of my favorites in New York City. I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan, and down on St. Mark's Place, there was an album called Physical Graffiti, and mid-'70s, and the building where that album cover was shot is on 8th Street on St. Mark's Place in New York City, and I went down there to photograph it, because in my book I have a chapter where I re-photograph old album covers. And there's a pizzeria right there. Before I set the picture up, I'm talking to the guy in there having lunch, and the guy's like a Zeppelin freak, and he had no clue that he was next door to that building. So sometimes it plays out like that, and he flipped out because it's his favorite album. And so things like that. It's fun, I think, sometimes to be able to educate people and show them what's there. I've slept in hotel rooms where musicians have passed away and the owners weren't that familiar with what happened. So yeah, more often than not, people just tend to not study this stuff too carefully. But then again, there are times where places are great about it. I mean, there's a restaurant out here in California. It's called Mexico. But it's a Mexican restaurant, a really good place. And back in the 60s, it's where the band The Doors had the recording studio and their offices. Wow. And the bathroom in the restaurant was actually the vocal booth where Jim Morrison recorded the entire L.A. Woman album.
Wow.
And, and this guy gets it. And he's got a plaque in the bathroom. The original handwritten lyrics are framed on the wall in there. So the guy that runs Mexico, I think, is really hip to all that. And he understands that makes for a more interesting experience. About a month ago, I interviewed Jeff Beck about a block away from that restaurant. He was blown away. He had no clue. But he was asking me, what's around here in terms of landmarks?
Wow.
And that was one that really caught him off guard.
Wow. So reading your new book, as well as Led Zeppelin Crash Here, you alluded to there's a lot of kind of creepy places, because, unfortunately, rock and roll does have a lot of death. And I've always been fascinated with Graham Parsons and the Joshua Tree. And
Yeah.
was it a real creepy place?
Well, it's a very nondescript. I mean, if it's creepy, it's creepy in how anonymous it is. It's just kind of, cinder block walls, really small rooms. I mean, Joshua Tree is visually really beautiful, but, it's a harsh part of the desert. So if you go out there, you're hiking and camping, you don't need a fancy hotel. And it's only got about 12 or 13 rooms. And, when he used to go out there, Keith Richards would go out there with him and Mick Jagger and the Byrds. They would sort of go wander the desert and then go spend the night at this inn. And room 8, where he died, what I did that did make it kind of creepy is there's a book that his manager wrote about the night he died. And I'm reading the book in the bed where the whole thing went down.
Oh.
And that's kind of strange. And you're looking in the mirror on the wall is the only original thing in there. So I'm thinking to myself, so the mirror kind of saw the event, you know what I mean, the way it was positioned. And I'm not a big guy for spirits or haunted things, but I will tell you what, there were 2 things that happened in the room when I spent the night there that were very peculiar. They involved shadows on the walls where I got up and looked, and there was no reason for these 2 shadows to have moved across the wall. But that was kind of I definitely think it's worthwhile to spend a night in that room. Also the Janis Joplin room in Hollywood where she died. I've spent the night there as well on the anniversary of her death, and that's another place that, really kind of gives you pause and creeps you out a little bit.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So I have a place that I went to that I don't know, you might have not have been there. So I'm going to run this by you. A few years ago, I took a friend, we went out to Memphis, and of course we wanted to go to Sun Studios. So we went to Sun, and then after that I go, well, why don't we just go over to Nashville, and because I'm a big Johnny Cash fan, I'm like, let's go to Hendersonville and see his house before it burnt down.
Right.
So then I'm kind of testing my luck with my friend. I'm going, how about we go to Dyess, Arkansas, where he grew up? And so we went to this little town. Have you been there?
No, you got me, man.
Oh, look at that, everybody. So Dyess, Arkansas is the colony where he grew up and his family grew up, and they were harvesting cotton, and the little shack, the little house that he grew up in is still there at the end of this long dirt road. And believe it or not, there's a big satellite dish right in the middle of his yard. Believe it or not.
Is there a sign or anything that marks it?
There's nothing. And there's a little diner down the street, and I walked in, just being like, of course, I mean, I'm from Boston, so I just walked in. I'm like, Johnny Cash is from here, isn't he? And I ordered a soda, and the lady's like, yep. And on the wall, they had one picture of Johnny Cash, and wouldn't you know, it was his mugshot.
No kidding. Oh, that's great. I got to get down there, man. I thought you were going to say you went down to, like, the Mississippi Delta, because everyone's got to go to the crossroads at some point.
Yeah, haven't made it there, but Dyess, Arkansas, it's something people kind of forget about, but his high school, I guess, isn't being used anymore, but it's still standing. And if you read his autobiography, Cash, he talks about how he was fishing the day his brother got killed in a car accident, and you see the stream, like, where he was sitting at, and there's an old movie house that's still standing, so it's actually pretty interesting. So next time you're in...
Take photos of everything?
I do have some photos, I think, so I should dig them up.
And I'd love those. That's really good stuff. That's a good job documenting on your part. But what you're doing is really important. Is you got to go kind of hit the basics. You got to go to Sun Studio. You got to go to Graceland and do all that. But then you got to wander. You got to sort of get out of that comfort zone and push a little bit like you did. I tell people all the time when you travel, that's a really key thing, is to go that extra couple of miles because you're there, you know. It may feel like, God, do I want to drive 50 miles? But, you know, once you're back home 2,000 miles away, you look back and it's like, why didn't I go see, where Jimi Hendrix burnt the guitar at Monterey or something like that? That's another great spot, by the way, up at the Monterey County Fairgrounds, Northern California. I went there, and I found the actual stage. It's in an equestrian stadium now, and somebody carved the name Hendrix right where he knelt and burnt the guitar into the wood, which is kind of cool. And I was sort of trespassing, and there was like a park ranger there, and she's kind of watching me, like pathetic as I was, like kneeling at the site that had reached the Wailing Wall or something, you know. And she comes up and she goes, give me a hand. I said, what are you doing? And she starts prying a chunk of the wood up. She goes, you need to take a piece of this. I can see what this means to you. Let's get you a piece of this stage. So she like takes out like a Swiss Army knife and starts prying the wood up, and I get this plank off the stage of where Hendrix knelt at Monterey. So sometimes you get lucky too. Like, if you look pathetic enough, people will pity you and want you to sort of leave with a piece of history.
Wow.
Hey, that could work for you, Mike.
I always look pathetic enough. So a couple more quick things before we let you go. Last time you were on our sports show, I'm just reminding you here, we don't have the quote now, but I think it was something like, you appreciated my work, and the next time you write a book, there might be a line in the thank yous. I'm just reminding you.
Oh, listen, I made a note that night. You're totally in.
Oh, shit.
You're carrying the torch. I will not forget that. You have my word, okay?
All right. All right. So, Chris Epting's book, Hello, It's Me, Dispatches from a Pop Culture Junkie. Chris, thanks for calling again. And I'm going to send you those Johnny Cash photos. We'll be in touch.
Send me the photos anytime. It's a privilege to come on and chat with you, man. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, and have fun at your signing.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Wow. All right. So, that was good. So we're going to hit a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right.
That was good.